Hey everybody, Studmin here, and we're checking out the Alien Deathstorm official gameplay reveal trailer. I missed watching the Xbox Day 1 of Gamescom, but I want to react to the few things that kind of caught my eye, so I'm gonna do Alien Deathstorm first. Everything's looking good, but I wanted to cover and react to the things I know for sure I'm gonna be covering live on Twitch and YouTube stuff, so start with Alien Deathstorm. Get right into it.
Hi, I'm Ben Fisher, Head of Design at Rebellion, and I'm here to talk to you about Alien Deathstorm.
Obviously by Rebellion. I
Explore
love
a
the Sniper
devastated
Elite
off-world
series, so
colony
this
that
should
has
be
been
really good.
ravaged by a cataclysmic megastorm and overrun by dangerous aliens. Use your skills and firepower to discover what has happened, help if you can, but mostly survive. Alien Deathstorm is an action horror first-person shooter. You are an isolated engineer faced with unsurmountable odds, dropped into a decimated human colony at the mercy of both a planetary-scale storm and a seemingly endless swarm of aliens. The storm is an ever-present and escalating danger, has done unprecedented damage, and proves a constant, ongoing threat to the intrepid engineer. You knew it was going to be bad, but it's much worse
Oh no,
than that,
not
and it's going
facehuggers.
downhill fast. What you thought was a rescue mission has now become a fight for survival. So Alien Deathstorm calls back to our roots as a developer, because we've worked on a load of different sci-fi games, a load of different shooters, and it's great to go back to the sort of roots of things that we've done in the past. What's been
Did
interesting
a
is
zombie
over
game
the
too, I
years
think.
we've
I forget what
found
it
new
was called.
skills, new layers to gameplay that make things feel like a uniquely Rebellion game. It feels like Alien Deathstorm does a great job of combining those retro roots with our modern sensibilities. One of the most interesting things I find in Alien Deathstorm is you've got clear goals to achieve and then a bit of sandbox freedom in how to achieve them. It's rare to see this in a horror game, and what we've done is we've built the enemy AI in a way that feels like you're being hunted, that these things are prowling to find
great.
you,
Can't wait.
and that you have to be calm and careful to explore this situation without kicking off a big fight and without getting yourself trapped into a corner.
No, I don't
A
want
lot of the gameplay
facehuggers.
really emerges
No,
from
no,
how
no.
the player's playing, as well as what they're trying to achieve. So Alien Deathstorm is inspired by our sci-fi past, and we've all got a fondness for that kind of 90s cassette futurism. Obviously Rebellion's worked on a load of different games and comics over the years, and we like to work on a whole different range of kinds of games at once, and it feels like it's a good time for us to make something sci-fi. So what we think will make Alien Deathstorm stand out from other similar sci-fi shooters is the things that make Rebellion games unique. So the fact that you've got a sense of sandbox freedom to achieve your goals, and that the situations are kind of emergent and dynamic around the player. What we found the most interesting in the game is the kind of balance, the interplay between the simmering tension as you explore and then the explosive combat when something goes wrong and a situation kicks off. If a game has one or the other, it can kind of be a similar tone across the game. We think it's really interesting that we found a way of balancing an interplay between these fields. One of the elements that makes a Rebellion game is we make sure there's a kind of tone range in the game, that the player has freedom in how to achieve their goals. They might want to play
That's
this
what's
game
awesome about Sniper
in a
Elite.
more
You can just
cautious,
play how you want to play,
stealthier approach, or they might want to go all
do how you
guns
want to do
blazing.
the
And the game
mission, and no
supports
matter
that,
what,
whichever
it's a
way you want to lead.
success.
So Rebellion's always
That's what I like
interested
about
in
their
developing
games.
new worlds for players to explore, new IPs, new stories. And we think it's a great time for us to do this again. One of the key elements of Alien Deathstorm is the dynamic way that the aliens
I know it's an
spawn and
alien
hunt
game,
the
but I've
player.
seen one
It's
too many
rare that you find a
facehuggers
game
in
that
the
combines
trailer.
horror and sandbox
It'd be
gameplay.
so fun.
And this really pushed us to build a world where, as the player explores, they're kind of upsetting the world, this ravaged world that was left after this cataclysm. And as they poke around and make a lot of noise, they might attract a lot of attention. Because it's a sandbox, we don't know where the player's going to be, and we don't know what they're going to be doing, so the game pays attention to the player, watches what they're doing, and then the enemy response is triggered by the player's actions. There's no way to choreograph kind of horror set pieces in that sandbox environment. And we found this different approach very satisfying, very exciting. Each player gets a completely different experience. Throughout the game, there are some situations where you're walking into a difficult situation and you're going to do something big and noisy, and you're pretty confident you're going to be walking into a big fight. So we have these dramatic high points, these dramatic set pieces. But beyond that, everything is dynamic, everything is player-driven. So absolute key element to Alien Deathstorm. Combat is brutal and unforgiving. In this environment where the player doesn't know what fight is going to kick off, they have to stay alert, they have to be paying attention at all times. If they get surrounded by aliens,
that's a lot of...
there's just as much chance that they'll die as the aliens will. So it's very, very high stakes, very high pressure, and that only adds to the tension of that kind of horror atmosphere. Another key element to Alien Deathstorm is obviously the storm. It's almost like a character in itself, and it's as much of a threat as
that's going to be
aliens
interesting.
are. What the player will find is that when they're indoors being hunted by aliens, that's a difficult and dangerous situation, and they're going to want to run to escape. And once they make their way out into the storm is just as much of a threat. It gives the game a unique atmosphere, and it gives the game different layers of threat, different layers of tension that the player has to deal with at any one time. It also adds to the dynamic feeling of this collapsing colony as you explore and find out what's happened. So the Deathstorm is a key element of the game, and really it emerged by itself over the course of development. Part of the way that we like to develop at Rebellion is to get something up and running, to build some game and play it and find out what's fun, find out what's interesting. And we found that it was very interesting to be moving inside and outside this colony space, so bits of natural landscape as well as these built-up man-made areas. And it felt very exciting to be out in this kind of hostile, off-world environment. So really, it amplified itself over the course of development. The storm became more and more prominent as a core part of the game, just because we found it so interesting, so cool.
It'd be just as terrifying to navigate as like
gritty and grounded
navigating all the
sci-fi
aliens
world.
attacking you.
You play as an engineer who's returning to this colony to discover what's happened. The colony has lost communications with the outside world, and you don't have any information other than your job is to go and find out what's happened and maybe fix it if you can. This is a difficult world to survive, and this is a job that a lot of people have in these off-world places. So you're more of an everyman than you are a hero. As you land, you don't know what's happened, and neither do the people that have sent you. It's your job to deal with the threat if you can, or signal for help if you can. So as an engineer, a lot of the story is driven by environmental storytelling and exploration. Part of your job is to analyze the situation, figure out what's gone wrong, and see if you can repair it or see if you can turn it to your advantage. So the skills that the player has and the actions that you'll be performing are very kind of engineering leading. In fact, this aspect of the game was inspired by some of the experiments we did in Atomfall. And
that's what I never got to play.
Done in games like Sniper Elite. We don't have traditional objective systems so much as a framework to support player-driven motivation. So your objective system is almost more like an engineering tool to help you diagnose the situation, diagnose the state of the world that you're in, use that to try and turn the situation to your advantage and find out what's happened. The player arrives after communications have already gone dark. Mystery is a critical element to this game. It amplifies your sense of isolation, of loneliness. It focuses your attention on what happened and piecing together a picture in your head of this desperate situation and how it occurred. You are joined by a basic companion AI called Squire. This is our way of framing your objectives and giving you a sense of ownership.
It's
like
almost Squire, that is such an awesome
in your pocket or
like
something
a companion.
like that. It's a basic support that's there as an engineering tool to help you interface with systems and understand what's working and not working. And then that drives your objectives and your way of exploring the world. We're aiming for Squire to be something that amplifies your sense of isolation and loneliness, because it's not that clever, it's not that complicated. So really you're there alone. And by having this simple voice in your ear, it makes you feel more alone. It makes you feel more trapped, more isolated. The alien threat in Alien Deathstorm are super smart, super powerful.
Alien design's
it really
incredible
feels like
too.
you're
It looks
being
so
hunted
good
by an active predator, and that you have to keep your wits about you to survive. In these sandbox environments, you have the opportunity to choose a good defensible location or do a runner if you think you're going to get cornered, but you really, really need to be smart as these things hunt for you. You get a good sense of anticipation before they arrive. You get lots of warning. You've got tools and you've got sound you'll hear in the environment that let you know a threat is coming. So you'll have time to prepare. That doesn't increase your chances of survival very much. So you'll need to be sharp, you'll need to be smart, and you need to do everything you can to survive. Combat in Alien Deathstorm is incredibly high stakes. Well, every combat encounter is emergent and unique. The player will have to keep their wits about them and choose very carefully how to deal with each situation. Different players may approach different encounters very, very different ways, and it's unlikely that two players will have the same encounter in the same location. So it'll be a very fresh experience, and it tailors itself around the way that you like to play. So we think that fans of Rebellion games are going to really enjoy how much we brought modern learnings into that classic sort of sci-fi formula, that we've managed to find ways of building sandbox gameplay around systemic horror, and that we can build situations that give player freedom, give them clear goals and a sense of freedom and tools to achieve them. We think people will really enjoy the kind of emergent gameplay that cascades around the player's choices. You see lots of that in recent Rebellion games like Sniper Elite, like Atomfall, and it's nice to take that formula and apply it to a new kind of game. So the one thing I'm really looking forward to players experiencing for themselves is that balance between simmering tension and cataclysmic combat, the rise and fall of the situation that you find yourself in, and that all emerging spontaneously around the player's actions. We can't wait to share more about Alien Deathstorm. It's coming to Xbox, PC, and PlayStation spring 2027.
Nice. Just missed it. So the fact that it's on Xbox Game Pass right away, like day one, is a hell yes. Like that'll for sure one of the reasons why like I mean it looks great. It's not like the reason, but the fact that it's on Game Pass is awesome. So that'll be exciting. Definitely checked it out Game Pass day one. Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one. Rebellion is an awesome developer, so that'll definitely be one to check out for sure. All right, so that's been Studman for Alien Deathstorm, and we'll move on to the next game. Stay safe, happy gaming.